Welcome to the Dealing with Goliath podcast. The mission of Dealing with Goliath is to sharpen the psychological edge in business leaders with skin in the game who want to be more effective under pressure, uncover hidden value, and increase profitability. With expert guests across the business spectrum, we deliver gems of wisdom, delving into their methods, their thinking and approach to business life and problem solving. This is the Grande Cup of Insight, a long-form podcast interview where we take the time, a little bit more time, to delve into our guests' experiences, stories, and get all those priceless little nuggets for you. So I'm your host, Al McBride, and my guest today is Adam King. Adam King is the captain of the ship at growth marketing consultancy Think Like a Fish, where he helps establish B2B and professional service firms implement a simple, scalable growth system in 90 days that gives them the platform to grow their business from 6 to 7 figures and beyond. He's also the host of the B2B Growth Think Tank podcast, where each week he and his expert guests share a ton of marketing strategies, ideas and tips, as well as masterminding actionable solutions to specific challenges sent in by real business owners. On two personal notes here. Number one, I was very kindly invited recently to be on that very show, which I think will be out in another couple of weeks, right? And it was great fun, and it's a brilliant format. It's very clever. We might discuss that in a few minutes. But the other thing is, Adam was recommended to me by one of his clients, who I happen to hold in very high regard. So he came with a lot of esteem. So it's great to be in touch with you again, Adam. Great to talk to you and great to have you on the show.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. It's great to be here, and I do hope I live up to that billing. Thank you very much. Very kind.
Yeah, no worries. First question straight out of the gate, just to mix things up a bit. Why do so many people find marketing distasteful?
Why do they find it distasteful? Well,
or
I think,
unpleasant, or just like, God, marketing, get it away.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to exposure, and it's like we are exposed to so much of it, and it just increases with all the ways that pesky marketers like us can reach the population and the masses. And I think a lot of it comes down to when it's done badly. And unfortunately, I think the majority is done badly. And I don't think it's always down to the individual that creates it. I think a lot of it is down from above. It is when it's kind of like, what are the objectives that are being set by the business? It's all about, we need sales, we need to make money, we need to blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't necessarily put the client or the customer in the center of that marketing.
Right.
Which is totally the opposite of what effective marketing needs to do. And my entire business is built around that very metaphor, the Think Like a Fish metaphor.
That's really interesting stuff. And it's a really good point. There's a weird parallel here. I was listening to a piece on the Harvard negotiation yesterday and was talking about the difference between deal maker mindset and implementation maker mindset when they're doing a negotiation. And it's exactly what you're saying. The deal maker mindset is you need to win, you need to get the scores on the board and all of this kind of rah type of attitude, which they make a lot of deals that seem really good on paper and they're flashy and impressive. And they're often very dominant and aggressive. Whereas they often don't work in practice, and loads of these things fail spectacularly or are hugely underwhelming. Whereas the implementer mindset is much more like what you're talking about, where they actually go, well, what are we trying to build here? What value are we trying to create here? And how will that work in practice? So it's much more, as you said, looking at both the long term, but also what you're standing for, really, if we're not getting too deep on that one. It's kind of values-based or something, isn't it?
I think there's also a thing in there around the different way of thinking. You know, you've got people that have growth mindsets, people that have scarcity mindsets, abundance mindsets, all that kind of thing. And I think when you see the sort of stuff like, and don't get me wrong when I say this, of course, there is a place to make offers and promote and all the rest of it.
Of course, yeah.
But if that's all you're doing, that's coming from a point of very short-term transactional processes and marketing and messaging and all that kind of thing. And by the very nature of conducting that type of marketing, you are communicating to your market what you think of them. You see them as a transaction. You see them as a
Yes.
walking wallet, in other words.
As you said, and people don't really like to feel like, because most people can tell, isn't that? That's really the bottom line, isn't it? Like,
Absolutely.
we're not really conning anyone.
I mean, there's the old adage that a lot of people will have heard. It's people don't love, don't want to be sold to, but they love to buy, and that is absolutely true. And you just put yourself in a situation when you've walked into a shop when all those non-essential shops were open, and the first thing that happens
Heady
is
days of walking into a shop.
the first thing that happens is a sales assistant comes up to you and says, we have a special on these, blah, 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 X, Y, and Z. It's like, I didn't even come in for that. Like, blah, blah, blah. Oh, thanks very much. You kind of back away. You might shuffle around for a couple of minutes and you're uncomfortable when you walk out the shop.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if you took the different approach and actually approached them and said something along the lines of, hey, how you doing? Just to let you know, I'm over here if you need me. If you're looking for X, Y, and Z, it's over here. Da, da, da. Or if you want to let me know what you come in that you're interested in, let me know and I'll happily direct you where you're going. Otherwise, welcome to the shop and please feel free to browse at your leisure.
It's almost word for word what I used to do in the gallery, in the art gallery back in the day.
Yeah.
Not even, it's exactly that. You just very quietly say it as well, and be, oh right, okay, fine. And then they can approach you, which I suppose is actually, I never thought of that. It is kind of almost the difference between outbound and inbound marketing, because at that stage, okay, they're in your gallery, in your store, or whatever the equivalent. But it's still them then deciding to engage. They're choosing to say, oh, excuse me. And you go, oh, yes, certainly. Can I help? Yeah. Rather than you going, hey, we've got a special. And what do you want to buy first? Are you looking for a present for someone? Are you? I see what you mean. It is very much the marketing equivalent. That a lot of people do that online, don't they? In particular online.
And I don't want to sort of go down the rabbit hole of this one too much, but there is a really quite... well, I don't know how famous it is, but I'm a marketing geek, so I know a lot of these sort of things. But anyone that knows Jay Abraham, he uses a great example, and he uses the example of a furniture store. And it's an example of the type of marketing that you wouldn't necessarily consider is marketing, and how one question or changing one question that you ask people when they walked into a furniture store, it had a dramatic increase in the sales that they made. And they tried all different variants of it and all the rest of it. But the one that they hit on that made the real difference was, hello, how are you doing? Which advertisement or which promotion or what was it that you saw that brought you into this, the store today? And that made all of the difference, because that then informed the person that was asking the question what they'd seen, indicated what it was that they were looking for, and allowed the conversation to open.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't have.
And that's a form of marketing. It's not sales. It's you've got your process, your client journey. You've got someone to come into the store, and if someone's just walked past, then obviously that's what they've done. And then they were trained obviously in how to handle that situation. But it opens the conversation, and that's one thing that I believe in massively. That marketing really is there when it's done well. It's purely there to start conversations.
It's an interesting point. It's a very good perspective. I mean, do you feel that that's the underlying principle of all about it? Is that something that's sorely missing again from the majority of people?
I think it is missing from quite a number, because a conversation is different than marketing isn't. Your marketing is not there to sell. That's not what it does. Okay. That is not there to sell. Your marketing is to generate awareness around the value that you provide your client or your customer, until they get to a point where they are interested enough to think about doing business with you. And that's when obviously the other side of things come in. I mean, I'm talking mainly from a service perspective here, but this is applicable to products and all the rest of it as well. And when I say conversations, it's there to start conversations. It doesn't always necessarily need to be between two actual people, actual human being. It's a conversation that's going on inside the mind of your client or your customer.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's to start that conversation almost with themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. I wonder what more, it's almost like they're saying, well, why don't you tell me a little bit more about what you have to offer? Or why don't you, or thanks very much for helping me there. I've actually got this other problem. Is there anything else that you can help me with? And that kind of approach and journey will go on, and that conversation will be going on in people's head all the time. And you can take and apply this thinking to almost any situation, whether it's if you're building one of these funnels, which I hate that term, but I have to use it because that's what people generally know it by, or if you're having conversations with somebody that you meet at at an event, or if you're conversing over social media or something like that. It's a conversation. It's asking about the other person. It's finding out what they value. It's helping them understand how to maybe reach a point where they're in a position to find a solution to a problem, or at least uncover the real problem that they're facing, and then potentially help them with a solution that you offer.
Right. I mean, that taps into a lot of the difficulties, I think, that the global COVID situation has, and lockdowns and whatnot have thrown up, which is, I don't know, you hear a lot of people, particularly smaller level professionals, maybe they're not in massive companies. Often they're either have, as I say, I use the phrase skin in the game, or they actually run their own little companies and whatnot. And they were doing great, or they're doing okay. And they'd say things like, oh, I can just sit and have a conversation with someone for 20 minutes over a coffee. Mm. And then, if in any way they need my service, they're going to buy my service. And it feels right. It feels like there's a value transfer, and it's all honorable and it's all decent. And instead, but then they get to the marketing side and they're like, oh, how do I funnel that into, as you said, getting that conversation going?
That's interesting, because the way I sort of talk about, the kind of people that I really can help and really love working with, it's the kind of people, when I say to them, do you ever ask yourself this kind of question, or do you ever say this to yourself, which is, we're absolutely brilliant when we're in front of people and we make sales when we do, but we're not getting enough of those conversations, or we're not getting in front of enough of those people to really make the difference, to take our business to the next place and the next level. And that's the marketing piece. That's the piece that a lot of people that they struggle with, because let's be honest, there's so many options out there that you market your business with. There's lots of promises and hacks and shortcuts that are touted out there, that you need to be on every social media platform, you need to pay for this and that and all the rest of it. But ultimately, you just need to find the few things that work well for you and create a process and a system around how you consistently implement them over time in order to achieve the outcome that you're looking to achieve. Because that's the only hack or secret that, if anyone wants that secret, I'll tell you. It is the secret to growing a successful and established business is to develop a strategy that's based on proven principles of human behavior that will be proven to generate the kind of demand that you need to get more conversations going with the right kind of clients over time. And you consistently execute the chosen tactics that will help you get there.
It sounds like you're replacing what a colleague of mine calls random acts of marketing, i.e. these sort of tactical kind of, oh, we'll try this and we'll try that and we'll try that. And it's not a bad idea to experiment with things. But as you said, you're bringing in, well, I was going to say an overarching, but maybe it's a more underlying strategy structure that can slot into. And it's also interesting that you're saying, you don't go straight into a particular channel. So you haven't sort of said, oh, you need to be blogging once a day, every day, or once a week, or doing YouTube, or doing a podcast, or doing whatever it is people doing Facebook ads or Twitter ads or whatever. It's very interesting. So I don't know, for me, there's also that principle of ultimately people only consistently do what they want to do.
100%. And I think the challenge out there is that when you then go out and look for ideas on how to market your business and all the rest of it, you'll come across people that sell certain things and all the rest of it. And, with all the respect to everyone that works in my industry, in any industry, I refer to them as the marketing hammers, because you are very good at what you do, and therefore your solution and your tool to get the job done is a hammer. And so everyone out there looks like a nail. And so if you just sell a shop, if you had a shop and you just sold hammers and someone walks in, you're going to try and sell them a hammer, even when they need a screwdriver for the job that they need to do.
Of course.
So it's kind of like, why on earth would you want to say to someone, well, you have to do this and only this and all the rest of it, because it might not be right for them. That's why the strategy piece is so important. It's the strategy piece is the key. Strategy over tactics every single time. And it's the thing that people hate to think about. They hate doing, because it's the hard work. It's the understanding the customer. It's doing a bit of soul searching and understanding why you enjoy doing certain things. And I found that over time, and I've been doing this 18 years now. I don't necessarily look like it, but I am in my 40s. And
you're looking well for your 40s.
Oh, thank you very much. But it baffles me when people try and do things that don't feel right for them and don't feel comfortable, because ultimately you'll do it for a bit, but it's a bit like trying to exercise doing something that you hate. If you're going to get in shape and you're going to diet and you're going to exercise, don't do something you don't enjoy doing. I hate running, for example. So I don't run. I don't do running, but I do the things that I enjoy. I play football.
Exactly.
It's
Which,
kind of like,
let's be honest, there's a lot of running, but you've changed the whole context of the running.
Exactly.
So it's probably better because you're sprinting and stopping and sprinting and stopping. So so the point is, it's actually probably more beneficial than if you forced yourself to go out for 2K or 5K or 10K run or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
And that's why I think it's more important to focus on principles. I actually focus on principles before strategy, before tactics. Yeah. And the principles are all about what are the fundamentals that have worked since human beings stood up. Those principles are that we are social animals. Mm-hmm. We like communicating. We like to feel value. We like to be felt as part of a tribe. We like to collaborate. We're the only species on the planet that can collaborate to the level that we do to achieve the things.
Why we became the alpha species on the planet.
Exactly.
Because we were weaker. We were weaker than a whole load of others, weren't we?
Oh yeah. You read *Sapiens*, for example,
and form teams. That was what did it. Yeah. Supposedly.
Yeah, read *Sapiens*, the book, and he's an Israeli author, and I can never pronounce his name, but that's a great read around. I have it up, and I can see you looking for it.
Yuval Noah Harari,
yeah, that's a fantastic insight into the way that human beings evolved and why we would do some of the things that we do. And you need to understand that at least a basic level to be able to then create when you're bringing it into business and marketing and all the rest of it, to create a strategy that is going to communicate, because that's what we're doing with marketing. We are communicating. We are influencing behavior. We are not necessarily persuading. We are influencing behavior to pay attention, to think, to feel valued, to be welcomed. I always say that your marketing should make people feel like a weary traveler has come to your door and you're welcoming them with a hot meal.
Right.
It's like the ultimate solution to a problem that they've been struggling with. And you deliver that marketing in a way that makes it easy for them to understand that actually I can solve this problem that I have. First of all, you need to know what that problem is. That's one of the things that you really need to understand. The problem that they're facing or the result that they really want to achieve. And you have to present that in a way that is easy for them to understand, that you understand what that problem is. Sometimes you can articulate that problem better than they can. That's when you really get inside the head. That's when you've really learned to think like the fish. And that's a thing from a famous copywriter that, that term. You want to enter the conversation that's already going on inside your prospect's head.
The classic marketing phrase. But I think people often sort of scoot over that and go, yeah, but of course, it's what a colleague of mine says, as I do a lot of presentation training where the principles are actually quite similar, and they tend to run all the way through, whether it's marketing or negotiation or a presentation. And it's one of the key things is you have to meet the audience, whether that's an audience of one or an audience of a million. You have to meet them where they're at, not where you're at. And again, it's one of those things where that shows empathy. It shows being able to actually try and project yourself into their situation, not yours. And it's what you were saying earlier about the equivalent of selling for me to make a sale, not for me to sort your problem out or help you gain value in some format. The print, as you said, it's an attitudinal difference. And I think, I think you're right. I think it's absolutely key.
And I'm a big fan of, and I've mentioned him already, Jay Abraham, and he talks about the strategy of preeminence.
Me too.
And that idea
we love Jay.
I mean, for anyone that doesn't know, just Google his name. He's incredible. And that strategy of preeminence is all around being the preeminent authority or advisor or provider of value to a specific group of people that you actually want to help. And that sometimes means recommending somebody to somebody else, actually telling them not to buy from you. And that sounds a bit weird.
No, well, it does, but it's, as he says, it builds on that fiduciary responsibility, which supposedly accountants and lawyers and other old professions have, where they're meant to put the economic or the best interests of the client ahead of their own. And that's the difference, is that instead of saying, yeah, I can build you this website for 10 grand or 100 grand or whatever, rather than saying, actually, you don't need loads of those things. You just don't. From your needs, you just don't. I know you're asking for them, but it would be irresponsible of me to take your money. Whereas most providers actually just go, oh, that's fine. Yeah, you asked what the price is. There's the price. And they know you don't need it, but they don't care,
Well, that's why I think that when it comes to sales, when you've done your marketing right, it doesn't necessarily it's not sales. It's a discovery process to ensure that what you have is right for that person.
Exactly.
It's a discovery, right? Are you dealing with this problem? Is this the best? What have you tried before? What resources do you have? Et cetera, et cetera. And is this, is what I offer you, is my hammer what you need to build your fence, or do you need to start with a spade because you haven't even dug a hole yet?
That's a good analogy there. I would just loop back one moment to, how do you think because people obviously they have a problem, they want it fixed, so that, as you said, they're looking at lots of tactical stuff. I hear loads of people are getting great traction with Facebook ads. And then they go, oh, no, they're much more expensive than they were 3 years ago. Oh, no, I missed the boat there. I'll jump on this next shiny object over here. Because they're, dare I say, somewhat desperate for a result, desperate for an improvement, and they feel they're missing out, the whole FOMO thing. But as you said, doing that deeper work, the more difficult work, where there's often even introspection, and you're really having to ask what you're about and what you stand for and what you don't stand for, and what are your little red lines, and all of these tricky little issues which one wouldn't maybe associate immediately with marketing. But how would you help someone, a client, work out whether it's that kind of, that feeling in the gut, whether it's a moral thing going, oh, you don't like this, buddy, or whether it's actually just that discomfort for doing, pushing the comfort zone. Maybe it's a level of exposure or vulnerability more so that they're not used to. Maybe they feel like if they're going to do, a podcast, that they think, oh, but I'm no good at interviewing or public speaking or whatever. So how do you help them through that idea that when they're choosing some channels, so they have their principles hopefully worked out to a greater or lesser degree, they're developing that strategy, and in that they're now looking for actionable channels. So, a lot of this is new to people. So how do you maneuver them from the difference of things that they just won't do long term because they don't fundamentally like them or they don't fit them, versus things that are just new and difficult or a little bit challenging?
Well, assuming that they've done the work on, as you say, the foundational pieces and all the rest of it, because initially listening to that question, it's the same response that I have in sort of 80 to 90% of the questions around that sort of thing. Like, oh, should I be doing Facebook ads or blah, 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 blah. It's kind of like, well, you could. However, what about the foundations? Because if you're telling me that you're doing Facebook ads, for example, and they're getting more expensive and they're getting harder, then is that the Facebook ads themselves, or do we need to go back a few steps and actually look at the offer, the target market, the message, all of that sort of thing? Because those are but advertising, any kind of advertising will only amplify what you've created at your foundational level.
Right.
As we've got a very interesting saying here that is, you cannot put lipstick on a pig or polish a turd. And the best marketing in the world cannot help a bad offer. So you always have to go back to that before you start blaming the channel or the tool or whatever else it is. But when it comes to what would I say to someone in terms of helping them to choose the channels or choose what it is that they want to do, if that's what I think the question was really at the core of it. Ultimately, it's a question of what's working for you now. What have you done in the past that produced results, but you're no longer doing? Because we've all gone, myself included, I am totally fallible to this as well. I get distracted as much as anyone because I do this for a living and I get interested with it and I'm a geek and all the rest of it. And I can go down rabbit holes like nobody else. There are things that I have forgotten in the past that were just like no brainer. Like, why have I stopped doing this? Why am I not telling more people to do this, etc.? So I'd start there and be looking at what's working. What do you enjoy doing? Like, what is it that actually you like to do? Now, I personally, as an example, I hate the whole idea of cold calling and all that sort of thing. I've never liked it, all that kind of thing. Now, not a lot of people do. Some people do. Or any kind of, I always felt like I was being a bit of a pest when I was reaching out to people. Right. I always thought it was a sign of desperation because I'm a marketer. I should have people coming to me, all that kind of thing, right? It's a story that's in my head. However, I realized that one of the things that I really enjoy doing is having conversations, meeting really cool people, interesting people, and collaborating with them, which is why I started the podcast. And that to me has been an amazing channel that allows me to reach out to people and start conversations, whether they come onto the show or not, but it starts the conversation. Offer them to come on the show. Now, this could be someone that I'd ultimately love to work with as a client. More of the time, it's someone that I'd love to collaborate with in some way and help spread the word about their business, my business, expose them to the audience, all that kind of thing as well. I don't feel any kind of apprehension about doing that anymore because I've over 100 episodes on the show now. The old show, the Client Catching Podcast, and actually we're doing the live launch of the show, the B2B Growth Think Tank, next week. So by the time this goes out, it will be the B2B Growth Think Tank. Right now, it's still the Client Catching Podcast. But the whole thing is done because of this very question that I asked myself. What do I love doing? Where do I want to take this show? What do I want to do differently? And
that's something that we mentioned at the very start, where you had me on as a guest. It was great fun, and it was a really quite a novel approach to podcasting. And just for people who don't know, as I understand it, and what you have is we had a chat about a certain stuff that we wanted to chat about, and that was great. And then at least half of it, then there was a common question that you get, or maybe it was specific from a particular client. And we basically just workshopped it. We basically just threw it out there and had a conversation back and forth of how to address it.
Yeah, it's like one of those virtual hot seats. If you've been to a mastermind and you get 5-15 minutes on the hot seat and you stand up or you sit down or whatever it is and you say, this is what I'm dealing with in my business right now. This is the challenge I'm facing. This is what I've tried to do to fix it. What would you suggest I do next? Like that kind of thing. And then the people in the room or around your table or whatever that is, mastermind it. Now, obviously, it's a virtual one and you are not in the seat, so we don't get to ask clarifying questions or all that kind of thing. So we have to go on certain assumptions. But really, it's me and the guest or panel of guests, as the future will be panels as well. So multiple people on the show at the same time. And the live event, go and watch the replay if it's now. But past guests, 3 at a time, we're just literally doing this for, it will be a 3-hour live event, but we'll break it up anyway. But I came up with the idea. I don't know why. It just felt that, I think one of the conversations that I had on the show, it almost felt like this. And I remember feeling so energized after the show that I thought, why wouldn't I do more of this?
Absolutely. Yeah. And as I said, it's great than just, working through a set of questions on a podcast, which, I mean, I've heard plenty of very good interviews where people just do that. But it's a very good idea, and I hope it works well for you. As I said, I certainly enjoyed it. I can see the merit in it also for the listener.
It's a collaborative piece. It involves a community aspect to it. And ultimately, I want it to become that repository of real solutions to challenges that real people are facing right now in their business. So that, if there's people in the future, let's be honest, we all go through similar cycles in a business. So there's going to be some variant of a challenge that somebody is facing along each path and each stage of their growth. So why not just work the nuances for somebody individual? And sometimes it just takes a repetition to hear something in a slightly different context for you to go,
exactly.
That's me. That's what I need to do.
It seems like it's a great resource, as you say, for people who are stuck, either because they don't feel they have many options, and that terrible phrase, I've tried everything. It's like, by definition, no, you haven't. Or, as you said, it's the opposite. They're at, a fork in the road and they have 2 or like 100 options, and they're, I don't know what to do. How do I, limit this down? Either way, as you said, I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea. There was a great energy there, and I can imagine, as I said, when you build up a library of those, it can be quite a resource for a lot of people.
It's a think tank. So,
and just say, full credit for thinking it up and then trying it out. I mean, I'd imagine it would do very well, but. And I know from you that we were talking before we hit record there, that you think of these sort of grand plans and events and projects and to get a bit of, and it gets the energy going, and it is great. And on that note, I don't mean to be negative, but it is to put it in a context of, you have to be ready to be underwhelmed or even fail. And I just wonder, what failures are you most proud of, or did you find most valuable or most instructive?
I mean, there's been plenty of failures.
And I use failure as a very negative.
Yeah, no. I think
so you could swap that with setbacks or disappointments or whatever.
No, Al, I think we need a healthier relationship with failure. I think more of us do. I think that we need to actually embrace it, because failure is an opportunity to learn. Like, what do we learn? Like, in a way, for example, what I'm doing with this podcast, it's almost like I almost don't want it to work brilliantly straight out the gate. There's something in me now that understands the lessons that come from things not quite going according to the way that you want them to go, because you don't then go and analyze and learn from them. You just get lucky. I say this to people all the time.
Yeah. You win or you learn, but I'm kind of like, because inherent in that, you win or you learn. It means that if you win, you don't learn anything. But I would think you're still needing to go back and, a lot of some of the top athletes or top sports people, and again, some of them do it in a very negative, unhealthy way, but a lot of them do it in a seriously healthy way, where even when they win, they're like, okay, they can take it in the balance of luck versus likelihood, if you will, and actually look at it in a broader context. This idea of resulting fallacy, where just because you got an outcome doesn't necessarily mean that you made the right or most optimum choice. There may be an element of luck or good fortune involved.
I mean, athletes are a great example of that.
Was that?
Athletes are a great example of that, because if you listen to some of the top ones talk, I mean, Mo Farah's a good example. When he's asked about a victory or a win or anything like that, he spends very little time in that kind of spotlight of celebration.
Yeah.
He'll very quickly turn, almost instantly after he's won a race. He doesn't bask in it. He talks about, yes, it was great, I worked hard. Now what? What do I do different? What do I do better? How can I improve? It's always that tone in the way that he talks.
Yeah, and I think that the tone is the thing rather than even the self-talk. And
Mm,
our mutual friend Nina Cook reminded me of that when it's, you know, people think mindset and self-talk is the words. And it is to a certain extent, but it's also the emotional resonance behind the words.
mm,
So, and that's why I said, you know, some athletes are quite unhealthy. They can't enjoy the victory, and that's not psychologically good. But a lot of them, if you hear them, they can kind of take a step back and sort of go, oh, I did that well, I did that well. Okay, more of that. That could be improved. That was lucky. I got away with that one, you know. And as you said, it's that much more objective way of,
mm,
okay, we did well, you know, and we came through and we got the result we wanted. But you know, there's still plenty of improvements that
mm.
can be made. But it's not in a blame frame, if you
No.
follow me. And so that tone is the key, as you pointed out, which it's a lovely one.
I think the last thing to sort of bring out around that, though, is that you don't get to that level without going through the failures
Mm,
and doing that process with the failures before you can do it with the successes. Mo Farah didn't break a world record the first time he put on a pair of running shoes,
of course.
right? He's obviously sort of embedded that process of learning from the failure. But if you try something once and you know, imagine the first time you pick up a golf club and you swing it and by absolute sheer luck, you get a hole in one. Do you think you can
It's
go
like
and
sets the bar
compete?
high, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think you're going to compete on the PGA Tour on the next swing? No, of course you're not. You just got lucky, and sometimes that can happen. But what do you learn? You know, unless you actually learn from that success and look at it and go, okay, did I just get lucky? Like, was there something in there that it was just right place, right time, something happened, blah, blah, blah. I just got lucky. Or did I do the work to prepare and all the rest of it? And actually, my hypothesis proved to be correct.
Exactly. It's as an artist friend of mine says, most people give up on their art when they're becoming artists,
Mm,
and they're in this curve of development, and it's not a straight line. You know, the average goes like this, but it's actually
yeah.
like this. But most people give up because they have taste. And what she means by this, which I thought was interesting, was because you want to create right up here. That's what the vision is,
Mm,
but your result is here. So
yeah.
you keep comparing and you're like, the reality is falling way short of the vision. And a
Mm,
lot of people just either get stuck and they can't improve more, or they just get too down on themselves rather than, as you say, taking it as a
mm,
more objective and going, okay, we're higher than we were last year or last
mm,
month or last
mm,
week. I suppose it's the same
absolutely.
with any business function. With a lot of other business functions, though, I think it's a little bit easier. It's more difficult when it's very much of you,
Mm. Oh, absolutely. Because
you know.
when you start your own thing, it is you. Like your entire kind of identity is wrapped up in a lot of it. And it's kind of like if the business succeeds, then I'm a success. Or if the business fails, I'm a failure. There's a lot of that in there because if it's you that has started it, especially around a skill or expertise and providing a service that has been honed, or the ability to provide that service has been honed over years of practice.
Mm.
If you then go, because if you go from doing that service when the people are brought for you and you just perform it to actually then running a business where you have to go out and get the clients, it's a very different thing because you feel that your inability to actually do that marketing piece labels you potentially as a failure not to grow the business. Whereas actually the reality is you spend all your time honing your craft, which is the thing that you do and the thing that, and the way that you provide value to people, which is exactly what you were supposed to do. Nobody teaches you then how to generate the clients in the business because there's no school for that necessarily.
Mm.
It is in of itself as much of an expertise as everything that you have put in to get great at what you do. So you're not expected to be brilliant at it.
It's a beautiful point. Yeah, it reminds a little bit also of, you know, David Hockney's idea of the poetry and the craft. That, you know, you need that hard graft of developing that craft
Mm,
with methodical discipline over time, and then you can do all the poetry you like. But
yeah.
often with a lot of industries, you need this deep discipline. And I
Mm,
say discipline in the sense of just perseverance and returning to whatever canvas you're working on,
Yeah.
you know. And it always sort of resonated with me.
Yeah.
On that note, just to change tack for a minute, I know you have a book, the conversational relationship marketing, and you've done an interesting thing, because most marketers, and the standard thing is to have it so that people have to give their email, which is a fair exchange, an email for a
Yeah.
book. But you've decided to try a different route on that one, and it's a very interesting book. First of all, I'd just say, can you just tell us a little bit about the book? Because I know it sort of sums up a lot of your philosophies, a lot of your approaches.
Yeah. So the book itself is called Conversational Relationship Marketing, and it talks about 10 golden rules that service professionals can use to essentially market themselves, attract clients, and ensure that they don't run out of work and that feast, famine, and all the rest of it. So it's based on a strategy and a philosophy that I think I've probably brought out a bit here, which is, I believe that if you focus your marketing activities on a daily basis, and it comes back to some of the questions you've asked, like what would you say to someone if all you're doing is simplifying what the activities you're doing in your business to market your business, and you focus purely on activities that will start and continue conversations with people you can either add value to, do business with, or collaborate with for a mutual win-win, those are the things that you do. And that's why I say that marketing is there to start conversations, especially when you are the expert, when you are providing a service, where you work with other human beings. So it is 10 ways. And the book itself sort of focuses on using LinkedIn, because right now, depending on when you're listening to this, we can't go out and do the networking, all the rest of it. It's like how you start those conversations when the event hasn't been put on for you. How do you go and get into the event that's already going on, which is LinkedIn at the moment? But it's applicable to pretty much any platform or any environment where your potential clients would be hanging out. And it's, how do you present yourself? How do you talk about what you do? How do you deliver your message? How do you initiate a conversation? How do you continue that conversation?
Just to interject on that one, that's a really, and that loops back to pretty much the start, where, you know, a lot of people on LinkedIn are going, oh yeah, LinkedIn's great and all, but I don't want to be one of those spammy people, you know, where a lot of that, since COVID, you get a lot of these things where, again, you're just like, you don't care about me. You're literally just trying to flog me something.
Yeah.
Where you get, and there's not even a how are you, or maybe there is, but it's just, you're just waiting for the marketing bot to hit you, you know, and then you're getting like the fourth message that you haven't replied to going, hey, I thought we had this thing. Blah, blah, blah. Go away. You're terrible. But a lot of people go, oh God, I don't want anyone to think I'm like that. And rightly so. But I presume in the book, then you help them move that to a more, what would you say, authentic or genuine or humane.
It is how to have the conversation, you know.
Have a conversation.
I almost felt like I was being patronizing at times writing it. But as you're right, there are so many people that I don't know if it's them learning from others or getting others to do it, or they've seen, well, I can automate this and just put messages into bots. That's the problem with LinkedIn. And when it comes to that, it sours the entire platform when people do the automation thing. And I know it's being cracked down on, but LinkedIn is not an autoresponder. And yet people treat it as such. They're dripping campaigns or an email sequence into somebody's message bot, inbox. That doesn't work. What about instead if you just started a conversation?
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes it is that simple, isn't
it? A lot of people, when I say that, it's like, yeah, but that takes a long time. Well, yeah, but it also takes a long time to sift through an awful lot of people by pushing crap at them, and it hurts you in the process.
Exactly, because when people then might be exposed to you in a better way, if you've done that, they'll be, oh no, you're that guy that, you know, was just trying to sell me crap that I don't feel I need. As I said, you've 100%. soured potential relationships down the line.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't want to go into the weeds of it because, as you say, there is a free copy available. There is not even an opt-in to get it, and there's the audio version that you can get your hands on as well. So there is no opt-in. There is nothing there. It is literally the premise behind it. This was like my weird, like I have full-blown ADHD, right? diagnosed in my late 30s. It opened my eyes to so many of the things that had defined me in my past, for example.
Explained a lot of things in the past.
Oh my God. But this was my ADHD lockdown moment that happened right at the beginning of the lockdown, in that I started writing a bit of an article that I was going to do a podcast episode around. I then literally wrote a book in 10 days. And not 10 solid days, in 10 half days within doing work around the same things, because my work days were cut in half with childcare between my wife. Some of the content was from other places and all the rest of it, but it was 10 days. I went into hyper focus.
Brilliant.
And I created it. And I was like, right, now what do I do with it? Oh, maybe I'll just, do the whole blah, blah, blah. But then I just thought, you know what? Why don't I just give this away? Because it was at that point of the lockdown where obviously there were people struggling. They weren't sure what to do. The conversations that I were having with clients, prospective clients, and hearing from people that we're talking to on the podcast as well, they're all going through the same thing. What do we do? Like, what do we do differently? How do we adjust to this new normal, which is the term that really irritates me now. But hey, it's like, what could I do? So I just thought, well, I'll just put everything I know how to, after doing this for quite a while and helping a lot of people do it successfully, I'm just going to give it away, because people don't pay me for information. They pay me to implement. Right. So I would rather allow as many people that I'm never going to be able to work with actually have that information and use it.
It's a very good point. It's very good. Very generous as well.
And there will be a certain number that read it and think this is great. What more can he do? I'm not totally altruistic, of course.
I imagine it'll also, as you said, and I don't mean to sound too business aggressive, but it'll also mean that people who will sort of go, okay, this is the guy I want to work with, because you set out your stall and people get a sense of you.
Yeah, there is a strategy behind it. I'm not going to lie.
No, absolutely not. But
it's there as a thing. But the virality of that happening, because it's given away. People, like, the whole idea of opt-ins and lead magnets and all the rest of it. It's great at a certain point in your client journey and all the rest of it. But if you can't get someone to consume your content by putting friction in front of people, if they're not ready yet to learn from you, to see what you do, and the first thing that they see when they come across you is, well, give me your email address. Well, everyone's fed up with being bombarded in emails these days. True. So we are far more protective of what we do with our information. I remove the barrier. There are points within the book that, yes, you can go and find more resources that do require that, but that's if they want to. It's kind of like, if you want this resource, then absolutely come into my world properly. But you don't have to. And there's templates and workbooks and everything that will literally allow you to step by step implement this whole system and process that works incredibly well.
Excellent. And just, I'd imagine there's a lot of parallels from what you just said in the last however long we've been on. But just to focus it then more into human relationships, which I get the sense is how you see marketing anyway. But what advice would you give someone around dealing with people, in the sense of making agreements or winning people over to your way of thinking? Because that's really, anytime we do negotiation or persuasion or influencing, we're trying to get people to see more of our worldview. I'm never a good way for them to go.
The weird thing is, I'm never trying to win somebody over to my way of thinking.
Exactly.
I'm simply showing them what can be possible with a particular path that I can help them tread, if that's where they want to go. It's different from saying, this is my hammer, can I hit you with it?
Exactly. And as you said, it's again, with the negotiation analogies, because I tend to think in these terms a lot, it's exactly like that. Like, a lot of people, there's almost an adversarial, even with marketing, where you're meant to be serving the customer or serving the client. There's almost an adversarial relationship, whereas as you just beautifully described right off the bat, you're moving it into more of an alliance or
absolutely And it
as you
also,
said, which is the key thing with the preeminence. Back to J. Abraham again.
it's the preeminence. But I think that sometimes one of the pushbacks that I get from this is, well, it's all very touchy feely. It's all very, softly, and all the rest of it. Well, if you only ever did that, of course, there are times to make offers. The key thing is that during this conversational process, when you are doing it consistently and you have a number of people in your pipeline, etc., that you're having conversations with, the right time to make the offer, it could be right at the beginning, but you have to understand the nuances of that particular conversation. And you have to develop your systems and your processes that will allow people to self-identify when that period is, when they are willing and open and receptive to hearing an offer. Now, that offer doesn't have to be literally like buy my stuff. It could be take the next step. An example exactly of that book. Yeah. Here's the free stuff. Here's my next offer. Because an offer is simply the opportunity to take the next step on their journey. And maybe that journey will end with working with you, but it doesn't necessarily. And sometimes you can lead with offers, because you talk about how do you win someone over to your way of thinking. Well, if you know someone so deeply, and you know their struggles, you know their problems, you know the thing that is keeping them awake at 3 a.m. and driving them nuts, and they're just saying, if only I could get more. And you can put an offer that says, do you want more? Yes, please. Tell me more.
Of course.
You can put that straight in front.
I used to have that question in kind of inverted commas, as win people over to your way of thinking. So no, I wouldn't go as far as to say it was in any way a trap. But it was to point out that that's often when people ask me about negotiation, it's how do I win people over to my way of thinking? Because that's kind of a common phrase. So it is exactly that. It's
more, I think the better way of sort of like thinking about it is, how can I understand what somebody wants so well so that I can show them how, with my help, you'll get it.
Exactly. I mean, this is, the Covey 7 habits stuff. What's number one is seek to understand before you're understood. And it's the same with any sort of a business relationship person. Tell me about your business. Tell me about how you do business. Tell me about, or your marketing in your case, whatever that might be. And as you said, then it's diagnosis before prognosis.
Yeah.
It also means that when you're then giving a suggestion or indeed an offer, that it fits far better into how they see the world and they see themselves and their problem and their customers or their clients and so on. And it can just be far, far better fit. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd certainly have a good chat with anyone who says it's very softly, because I'd imagine if it doesn't have that actual softly, as in humans having conversations, rather than, as I said, hitting people with hammers, which is quite a good analogy in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I use the analogy of, because I use the fishing analogy, which is the whole thing like a fish. You've got to understand your client so well that, you understand that you cannot catch a fish with chocolate cake, even if you love it. They like worms. So don't stick a big fat chunk of chocolate cake on the end of your hook, because it ain't going to work, right? It's really understanding that client and all the rest of it, and being able to put yourself in their shoes to the point where it just makes sense. Like, you're talking their language, and they kind of see you as an equal. And that's where the whole, I don't work with clients anymore. I work with partners.
Gotcha.
And we sit on the same side of the table. And I know that's a phrase that you like. It's like we sit on the same side of the table.
When you say it, people immediately get it, that you're not an adversary anymore. I mean, you definitely shouldn't be an adversary. But as you said, a lot of companies providing marketing or whatever professional service, they tend to act with far more distance than they should. And then they wonder why their clients go to other options. And, the lifetime customer value isn't very long and this kind of thing.
Well, I share in the risks and the rewards of working with somebody, with a partner. So there is an investment in the partner as much as the partner is investing in me. So the majority of 90% of the cost of ultimately working with me is all linked to actually results. But that means that I can select the kind of people that I know I'm going to enjoy working with. I know I can help. I know can make a difference to their clients when we actually work together and help more of them. And it means that we share in the risk and the reward, because there is that thing around marketing. It's like, well, how do I know this is going to work? Well, if anyone tells you they know it's going to work, they can't, because they haven't worked with you yet. Yet I can guarantee a result because the majority of the investment to actually achieve the result is based on you actually achieving it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And a lot of people don't put their money where their mouth is, I think, in this game, and that's why it's a bit tarnished.
Absolutely.
Because,
I mean, I use the term "skin in the game" because it really is that. It's that.
Yeah.
I mean, Nassim Taleb wrote a whole book about don't trust anyone without skin in the game. Simple as that. As a rule to live by. There are exceptions, of course, but because sometimes you do want third-party opinion for a fresh perspective. But other than that, yeah, I think you're right. And on that note, we might pause the conversation there until our next chat, Adam.
Yeah, I love talking with you, Al, because there's so many ways that it can go, and it's as I say, the ADH brain can go off in so many directions. So it's such fun talking. So thanks very much for having me here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. And as always, I will of course have the link to your book under the podcast and under the video. And
what I'll do to make it easy for people if they want to check out the book and the podcast and all the rest of it is I'll if you go to thinklikeafish.co.uk/Alistair.
Yeah, that's ALISTAIR.
Or shall I make it even easier? I'll make it even easier. Thinklikeafish.co.uk/Al.
AL. Perfect. You can't misspell.
And that means that there'll be all the resources on there that we've discussed, the book, the podcast and all the rest of it. So it'll be easy to remember.
Cheers, mate.
Take it easy.
Talk to you soon.